Good evening, everyone. I'm Matt Voltz, and welcome to Sports Hour on WNYF. I'm joined by Jack Hoadley to talk about some NFL action. Later, Brock Papke will join me to recap the rest of last week's NFL games, and Jenna Polito will join the show later to talk some NHL hockey, including the Sabres, who are out to a big lead. But we're going to start with football. Jack, Thursday night, the Houston Texans and the New York Jets.
Wow. I mean, this game was a true shocker. I ultimately picked the Jets to win this game, and I really had little faith in the beginning, but it just felt like they had to get one to get their season back on the right start, and they absolutely did.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at the Texans, this is a team that is supposedly one of the best in the AFC, right? And you're going to face the Jets, which was a team that obviously was built to be very good in the offseason. But if you're Houston, going to MetLife Stadium, this is a game you kind of had to win. It's Thursday night. It's a little bit of a short week. The Texans' offense has been somewhat sputtering. Not to mention they've got some wide receiver injuries. Stephon Diggs out for the year. They've been missing Tank Dell, that sort of thing. So the Texans offensively kind of struggled in this game against a good Jets defense. But like you said, Jack, it's a big win for the Jets moving forward this season.
Absolutely, a huge win for the Jets as a team, but also for Houston. Like, this O-line and these injuries to their wide receivers could really derail their season going forward. And I don't think there's a lot to look forward to when Texas' last hope here for the NFL season.
Absolutely. Speaking of not a lot to look forward to, the Dallas Cowboys were in Atlanta on Sunday, and that was a little bit of a rough game for you, Jack.
Yeah, rough game all around. We lost by basically 2 scores. They tried to make it close in the end, as they always do, but it didn't really amount to much. And now Dak goes down for what could be the rest of the season, as a report said earlier today. And even CeeDee Lamb looks banged up going into a big game against the division rival Eagles. Yeah,
that is a huge game for Dallas. I mean, the Cowboys are now 3-5 on the season. This is a Dallas team that, on paper, they're too good to be 3-5. They're much better than a 3-5 football team, Jack.
I mean, yeah, tell me about it. And to not talk too much about the Cowboys, as I tend to most of my days.
We appreciate it.
Atlanta, they could be a contender in the NFC. I don't think this game necessarily proved it, but that big win against the Buccaneers a week ago, and I don't know. There's just a lot of promise in Atlanta, and Kirk Cousins is certainly a legit top 10 quarterback in this league.
Oh, absolutely. And you look at the rest of that NFC South, too, Jack, there's not a whole lot of competition. You have the Carolina Panthers, which at this point barely count as an NFL team. You have the New Orleans Saints, who, A, have now lost 7 in a row and have fired their head coach, and B, their salary cap concern going into next offseason. The Saints are something like $80 million over the salary cap, and that's before having to re-sign any of their players. And then really the only threat for Atlanta is that Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, which, Jack, they beat in a pretty big game the other night.
Absolutely. I mean, there's just not a lot that could really get in their way of at least winning this division. And when it comes to the playoffs in the NFC, there's not many teams that are going to want to play a home game in Atlanta. And I think that that's going to be huge for them as they go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to our next game, which was a pretty fun one for a lot of us here in Western New York, the Bills and the Miami Dolphins. Every time the Bills and Dolphins meet, especially in Buffalo, it's always quite the atmosphere. I was there last year when the Dolphins came to Buffalo, and it's the loudest professional sports atmosphere that I have ever been a part of in my entire life. I don't know that it was quite that loud at the stadium on Sunday, but man, when Tyler Bass hit a 61-yard field goal, the longest in Bills franchise history, breaking Steve Christie's record, man, that stadium was loud, and this is a Bills team that is really putting distance between themselves and the rest of the AFC East.
Yeah, certainly a couple of tight moments there for all the Bills fans here in Western New York, but I mean, what a huge win for you guys down the stretch. I think it looks so promising for you guys to at least make a good run to the championship game in the playoffs, and whether or not the Buffalo Bills can finally put it together, we'll wait and see on that. But I think it looks great for you guys.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at even just starting small with the rest of the AFC East. The Bills are 7-2, right? 9 games in, 8 games to go. Buffalo is 7-2. The second place team in the AFC East is the New York Jets at 3-6. Then you have Miami at 2-6. They've already had their bye week. And the Patriots at 2-7. The Patriots not really expected to be serious contenders. But the Jets and the Dolphins are two, on paper, decent teams that have gotten off to bad starts. Now, for the Dolphins, their case is a little bit different. They went a few weeks where they didn't have Tua and they didn't get good play from their backup quarterbacks. But for Buffalo, you're 4 games ahead in the AFC East with 8 games left. Over the next couple of weeks, Jack, the Bills have a huge opportunity to really put some distance between themselves and the rest of this division.
Absolutely. I mean, I know nothing's a 100% chance, and I don't want to jinx it for anybody, but the Bills are almost a lock to win this division. And we were talking about some Southern dumpster fires earlier, and that is certainly a great way to describe the Miami Dolphins so far. They've had a bunch of close games and competitive losses when Tua has been healthy, but at 7 losses now, I believe, it's just not looking very good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the Bills in Indianapolis to take on the Colts on Sunday, and then after that, it's the big Bills-Chiefs game, 4:25 on November 17th in Buffalo. So we'll move on to our next game, the Raiders in Cincinnati against the Bengals. And Jack, Cincinnati finally starting to look, and they're playing tonight. They're in Baltimore against the Ravens. The Bengals may be starting to look like what we've expected from them.
Absolutely, and I think this is a team that's primed to make a playoff push or at least compete for the wild card spot at this point. They have Joe Burrow, who I think is playing MVP football on just one of the most disappointing teams so far this season. But as he picks up his play and as this team keeps going and building chemistry, I think they have a real shot to not only make the playoffs in the AFC, but contend going forward.
Absolutely, and the Bengals are already out to a 7-0 lead in their game against the Ravens. Chase Brown with a rushing touchdown in that game, 7-0 Cincinnati. On the flip side of this game, Jack, the Raiders are a team that there's not a whole lot of positive things to say about them.
No, absolutely not. And in a year where there's so many different teams that could be competing for that first overall pick come April, the Raiders certainly seem primed to be the #1 candidate for that, as they just look super disappointing down the stretch and are just not putting together many quality losses or wins ever, period.
I mean, they lost to the Carolina Panthers. What more reason do you really honestly need? I mean, not only that, but they've had quarterback issues. Gardner Minshew has looked absolutely terrible, which breaks my heart. I'm kind of a member of Minshew Mania. I'm a big fan of his. And Aiden O'Connell, who I actually have Aiden O'Connell's autograph hanging on my wall of my dorm room. Crazy fact, but it's true. And, I mean, Aiden O'Connell wasn't playing well before he went down. He got injured, so not a whole lot really probably to look forward to for the Raiders.
Certainly not.
No. So we'll move on to our next game, the Cleveland Browns. Speaking of teams that just don't really have a whole lot to look forward to. A home loss against the LA Chargers in a game where, yeah, this wasn't close.
No, and there's absolutely not much to look forward to in Cleveland. They have one of the worst contracted quarterbacks in NFL history, who also happens to be out for the entire rest of the year. On the Chargers side, though, I think this is another team in the AFC that's going to stay competitive. Their division is rough with the Chiefs at 8-0 and the Broncos looking very competitive, but I think that they're going to be a team that sneaks in and maybe makes some noise, as those Harbaugh brothers tend to do.
Yeah, no kidding. And you talked about the Browns with Deshaun Watson. I mean, like, I don't even know what you do if you're Cleveland. You've committed so much money to one player who, A, was flat out terrible when he was healthy, worst quarterback in the league, no question about that, and B, is now out injured for the year. So you're paying a quarterback millions upon millions of dollars, one of the biggest contracts in the league, to not even play for you. And to be completely honest, you're probably better off the fact that he's not that we want to wish injuries on players, but the Browns are probably better off not having Deshaun Watson suit up for them.
Certainly cheering for a reason down there in Cleveland when he went down.
And that's the thing. How often do you see fans cheering for when their own starting quarterback gets injured? That happened when Deshaun Watson went down. It's crazy.
I know I wasn't when Dak went down earlier this week.
Oh, absolutely. Because most teams want to see their starting quarterback play for them. And for the Browns, that has not been the case because, again, Deshaun Watson has been so genuinely horrendous. Like I said, the worst quarterback in the league.
Truly an anomaly there in Cleveland, Matt. I'll tell you what. Whew.
Well, no kidding about that. We'll move on to our next game between two struggling teams in the AFC, the New England Patriots in Tennessee against the Tennessee Titans. Some overtime heroics in this game, or some heroics to get to overtime, I should say. New England, as a Bills fan, I will say Drake May makes me a little bit nervous. I really think that he has played very well since taking over as the starter in New England. I think he's looked really good on Sunday, leading the Patriots down the field to tie the game and go to overtime. And Jack, he had one heck of a play to throw that game-tying touchdown and send that game to overtime when he found, I believe it was Ramondre Stevenson in the end zone. That was a heck of a play. I mean, that Rookie of the Year candidate play right there.
Absolutely, and I think if he started out earlier this season, you would see Drake May much more in that conversation. And I don't want to just say that he's the Rookie of the Year this year. I think he's the best quarterback in this draft class based on how he's playing. And here's the crazy part. He's the youngest starting quarterback in the NFL, which you expect out of a rookie, but not a rookie who's playing this well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very close between him and Jaden Daniels. The two of them have both played really, really well. And you look at, I think you had also mentioned in our notes that the Titans are kind of in a similar boat to teams like the Browns and the Raiders.
I mean, I don't see much of a difference when you tell me the Raiders, the Titans, and the Browns. They're in quarterback peril. They have some decent run games and some good skill position players and solid defensive players all around. But just what do you see from these teams going forward? I don't really know. There's not much of a future there for the Titans like there is with the Patriots where they have that guy at QB.
Yeah, these are teams that definitely probably have longer rebuilds ahead of them. We got two more games to cover before we get to break. The Washington Commanders against the New York Giants. And this was a little bit closer of a game than a lot of people expected, Jack.
Absolutely. The Giants are a competitive football team. They've played well-ish up to this point in the season, and they've lost games, but I think that they could really show some signs to impress in the future as they go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Then one last game, the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young, a solid showing, and the Saints end up firing Dennis Allen after a bad loss.
Might have been the best thing I've said on this show is that Bryce Young should start for this team.
Well, absolutely. Well, thanks, Jack, for joining me. We're going to take a quick break and then be rejoined by Brock Papke to recap the rest of last week's NFL action. I'm Matt Volz. This is Sports Hour on WNYF.
You gotta do the same. Post office, all you do is sign. So don't get nervous. Sign your name. For selective service, it takes no time. Just sign on the line at the post office. For selective service.
Hey guys, if you're about to turn 18, you've got to register with Selective Service. It's simple. Just go down to the post office, fill out a card, and turn it in. That's all there is to it. There's no draft now. You're just adding your name to Selective Service's list in case there's a national emergency.
So if you're 18 now, Selective Service, you gotta get down to the post office.
Register with Selective Service. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the law.
Takes no time. Just sign on the line at the post office. Selective Service.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Welcome back to Sports Hour on WNYF. I'm Matt Volz. I'm now joined by Brock Papke to recap the rest of last week's NFL action, so we'll jump right in, Brock. The first game that we want to cover, the Denver Broncos and the Baltimore Ravens. And Brock, this game was not particularly close.
No, it was a massacre. It was very much gory. It was gorb, if you want to say that.
Yeah.
It was also just 41-10, and I just feel bad for the Broncos organization for all of that. Back-to-back touchdowns and all that.
Yeah, and this is a Denver team that they got out to a 5-3 start with rookie quarterback Bo Nix, who he's a rookie, but he's 24 years old. He's probably twice as old as the other rookies in the league. And I say that as an Auburn football fan who watched Bo Nix play in college. But The Broncos got off to a 5-3 start. I don't know. I just didn't see it with Denver. I really don't think that this Broncos team is all that great. I know they're above 500, but I just really haven't seen it. Bo Nix has played okay, but he's had one game where he topped 200 yards passing or something like that. I mean, he hasn't played great, and the Broncos on paper, the Broncos remind me of the Bills during their playoff drought, Brock.
Oh no! Don't.
And I don't mean to bring up the drought.
Don't remind me. Man, about the drought.
But you know what I mean, though. Like, they remind me of a team that is very mediocre. Some weeks they look like, hey, this could be a playoff team. Some weeks they look like, have these guys ever seen a football in their lives? It gives me those sort of vibes, if you'll allow me to make that connection.
Mr. Volts, you're giving me PTSD from that.
Well.
Thing right there. I mean, I can see it. I can see how.
You know what I mean.
But but it. Close to the gut, man.
Not to bring up the drought, of course. We'll move on to our next game, the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Philadelphia Eagles. This game was a lot closer than I think a lot of people expected, although it did feature one of the craziest plays I think I've ever seen. Eagles running back Saquon Barkley, a reverse hurdle, a no-look leap backwards over a Jaguars defender, a play that made the entire Eagles sideline go nuts. And I saw something on social media that said, as a professional athlete, if you can make a play that makes an entire sideline of professional athletes, if you can make all of their jaws collectively drop, you've done something pretty cool.
And the feat of itself, like doing a backwards hurdle.
The physics of it. How?
I don't know. I could demonstrate it, but I don't want to break a neck.
I had the same thought. I thought about demonstrating, but I'm not going to.
It's more or less, because I also have some regard to myself. I think it's more or less just like physics-wise. You gotta like break it down scientifically.
Exactly.
There's science classes that should be studying this now.
There you go. We'll move on to our next game, an NFC battle, the Arizona Cardinals and the Chicago Bears. Arizona, a team that they didn't play particularly great in this game, but they didn't necessarily need to. The Bears are now 4-4 on the season, and interesting to note, Chicago is 4-0 at home and 0-4 on the road. So Caleb Williams still has never won a road game in the NFL, which is interesting because he's also never lost a home game.
It's the Bears, man.
It's interesting.
It's the Bears, man. Like you're expecting that year after year. Like it's the Chicago. It's the Bears.
The Bears.
Yeah,
well, and it's an interesting question too, because the Bears are a team that they're a 500 football team.
Yeah.
They're in a very difficult NFC North division, but with the rest of some of the teams in the NFC, Chicago could be in line for a wild card spot, but not if they can't win on the road, Brock.
Yeah, I mean they need to. Like I've been saying, appearance after appearance after appearance, you need to find something that clicks, and you need to find something that. There's no good football team without that something that's clicking, and that game, no one was clicking as much as perfect. Any game on the road, they're not clicking as much as they should. They should get like the same energy as home, and then just like bring it on the road.
Right.
But no, they're not. They just need to figure that part out.
Right. The Bears are a young team, so there's definitely still some hope for them. Speaking of the NFC North, we'll move on to our next game, the Lions in Green Bay against the Packers. And boy, Brock, this Lions team is really, really good.
I love it. And this is like the first time me saying this. I love it. It's the Lions. Historically, the Lions are like the most when you think of like bad teams and the place in the Thanksgiving Bowl, the Lions are like the first thing. They literally made a joke in Family Guy about that.
Yeah, they're synonymous with losing, especially on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, but dude, like the past few years with the Lions is just magical. Like that one coach. Why am I?
Yeah, with Dan Campbell, I totally know what you mean.
Yeah, Campbell. He embodies everything that's going on with the team. It's 7-1, and it's just like football. That's why I'm loving the game so far.
Well, they're 7-1, and they're a team that has not lost a game on the road yet this season.
The Bears, you should learn about that.
There you go. You go to Lambeau Field, and take down a solid Packers team, a divisional win, that's a big statement win for this Detroit team.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So we'll move on to our next game, an NFC West battle, and we saw some bonus football in this game. The Rams beating the Seahawks 26-20, a one-handed touchdown catch for the win by Demarcus Robinson.
Yeah.
This was a game that it was a close back and forth. Looked like Seattle was going to come away with the win, and then the Rams end up coming back on the road. And this is a win that it's a Rams team that on paper I think is a solid playoff caliber team, but they didn't necessarily start this way. This was a big-time game for the Rams to win, to get back to 500, their first road win of the season. And for Seattle, after a 3-0 start, Brock, the Seahawks 2-5 in their last 7 games.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or 1-5, rather, in their last 6.
1-5. Yeah, it's just I don't know about this, man. It's just.
Well, yeah, the Seahawks were kind of a team that they started 3-0, but they didn't play necessarily the best schedule. So it kind of leads to questions about, were they for real at the beginning of the season?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So our Sunday night game, which I'll admit I didn't get a chance to watch, but Sam Darnold continues to lead the Vikings to success, 3 touchdown passes, as the Vikings beat the Indianapolis Colts, of course, Buffalo's next opponent, 21-13. And what we've seen from the Vikings this year, a lot of people, especially when first-round pick quarterback J.J. McCarthy went down, I think a lot of people expected that the Vikings were going to not be very good, especially with how good the Lions are and how good the Packers are, and the promise that the young Bears showed.
Yeah.
The Vikings are 6-2. Brock, they're a team that I really felt like the first few games of the season, the Vikings were maybe a team that wasn't for real, but we're halfway through the year, and Minnesota keeps finding ways to win.
Yeah, they find ways to win, and they know how to pass and receive yards. And hell, I got Jefferson on my fantasy league. And
there you go.
He's always a treat, even though he did the thing.
Of course, the 4th and 18 against Buffalo from a couple of years ago that none of us like to talk about.
Yeah, well, you gave me PTSD earlier.
I was going to say, we're just bringing up painful Bills memories on this episode of Sports Hour, I guess. But,
exactly.
So we'll move on to our Monday night game, which, speaking of a little bit of pain for AFC football fans, another overtime game, and the Kansas City Chiefs, again, look beatable, and again, find a way to somehow win. The Buccaneers were coming into this game without their top 3 receivers, and they still made it a game. They still took Kansas City to overtime. Baker Mayfield drove the Bucs down the field to tie the game late in the 4th quarter. And then the coin toss happens. And the rule change that happened after the 13 seconds game was, of course, that in overtime, in the playoffs in overtime, both teams get a chance to possess the ball no matter what happens with the coin toss. That's not the case in the regular season. It's still the same rule that whoever wins the coin toss can drive down the field and score a touchdown. How do we feel about this rule, Brock? Because I have mixed feelings, but I'll let you go first.
So, I'm going to cook real quick, so just give me a second. I think that rule was beyond nonsensical. I think you should just do whatever you do in the regular season to the playoffs. At this point in time, what they did last night, I almost said last night, Monday night, I think, and call me a conspiracy theorist, I think it's more or less trying to give the Chiefs, which is a beatable game, the win. I don't agree with this, and I think it should just not happen. But no, just the 13-minute game happened. But no, the Chiefs are undefeatable. I'm going to just calm down before I explain.
Yes.
So, there you go.
I'll briefly explain. I have mixed feelings on it, Brock. I think it's kind of ridiculous that you don't have both teams getting an opportunity to possess the football. I like what college football does. They have it's sort of like a more of a shootout style of overtime where both teams get the ball at the opposing 25-yard line. There's no time on the clock, and you essentially have 4 shots to get in the end zone or kick a field goal.
Yes.
But each team gets the same number of possessions. I like that overtime format. I will give this counter argument, though. There is a way that you can ensure that your offense also gets the ball.
Yes.
You play defense. And that is something that's why I don't blame for the 13 seconds game, like you mentioned.
Yes.
I don't blame the coin for why Buffalo lost that playoff game. I blame the defense. Because if you play defense and make a stand, you get the ball back anyways. And then all you need is a field goal to win.
Maybe the defense should just, I don't know, work their behinds off.
You got to show up to play defense.
But I guess it's just nothing, and the Chiefs always win. And all
there
the
you go.
time, and all praise.
And of course, the Chiefs will be coming to Buffalo in 2 weeks to take on the Bills on November 17th. It'll be a great game.
Snow game, anyone?
Snow game. Well, we'll see. So we'll move on to our next segment. We're going to take a short break. Thanks for joining me, Brock. When we come back, give you a handshake. When we come back, Jenna Polito is going to be joining me to talk some NHL hockey. A big night starting off for the Sabres. I'm Matt Volz. This is Sports Hour on WNYF.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school or even let alone go to college, so I'm trying to break that barrier. Every day after work, went straight to school, studied hard, and it paid off. I could not have done it alone. I see the future is really bright for me. The high school diploma is just added to the confidence, and now I feel unstoppable.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
To Sofia and Gabriel, mis flores, my little flowers. Even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love, so you can take me with you wherever you go, near or far. These stitches and threads join us together. Me, your mother, and both of you. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you as you bring our colorful stories to the world.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread and kissed them all soundly and put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome back to Sports Hour on WNYF. I'm Matt Volz. I'm now joined by Jenna Polito to talk about the NHL. And boy, Jenna, Sabres fans are feeling pretty good right now.
It's a good night for us. I mean, we're playing the New York Rangers, who they're coming off a win. Last time they played was Sunday, I believe, a 5-2 win over the Islanders. Honestly, I mean, especially with the team that is as good and as recognized as the New York Rangers are, we're beating them 5-0 currently. It was 6-0, but that goal by J.J. Peterka got overturned.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
I was too busy doing my Sports Hour hosting duties. I didn't even see that sixth goal. But, I mean, you talk about this is a Buffalo team that they're sort of trying to build some momentum. They've been very up and down this year. They won their last game, obviously beating Ottawa on a very convincing win at home on Tuesday night. They're looking great on the road against a very good New York Rangers team. The Rangers were 8-2-1 coming into play. And Jenna, you look at the rest of the Atlantic Division, and it's early in the season. We're only about a month into the season, but the opportunity is there for Buffalo to really put themselves in a good position if they can string together a couple of wins like this.
Yeah, I mean, currently our record is at 5-7-1, so we're about 7th in the division. Yeah. Right behind us are the Canadiens, so there is room for improvement, of course. We do also have we have played the most games out of many of the teams in the Atlantic, but there is still time. I mean, we did just pass about a month into the NHL season, so it is pretty early still, but just this inconsistency. I mean, it's really got to change. Before that Ottawa game, we were on a 3-game losing streak, lost to the Panthers 5-2, and then the Islanders 4-3, and then the Detroit Red Wings 2-1. That was a very, not a very, like, nothing was really going on in that game. I mean, Alex Tuck was the only person to score. It was a shorthanded goal. That's pretty much all that happened. But
no, that Detroit game, Buffalo just, they didn't look like they had any sort of fire offensively. I mean, there was one chance late in the game. Jack Quinn has a chance with a wide open net, and not only does Jack Quinn not get the shot off, he doesn't even stay on his own 2 feet, Jenna. He falls on the ice, and it's just, there's a couple of players that right now the Sabres really need more from, and Jack Quinn is one of those players. Jack Quinn is one of my favorite players on the Sabres team. I think he is a phenomenal piece of this core, but I really think they need to get more out of him. Now, he's not the only one, but you look at players like Dylan Cousins, who scored tonight, defensemen like, Matthias Samuelsson and Bowen Byram as well. These are players that are integral to Buffalo's core, and they really need to get more from those key players. Part of the problem from last year, Jenna, was that they didn't have their star players playing like star players. Some of them have. Tage Thompson has been very good to start the season, and Thompson also has a goal tonight. But a few of their players really have got to step it up.
Going back to the players, especially the defense, I think one of the things we definitely saw in the Ottawa game, we saw both Matthias Samuelsson and Henry Jokiharju as healthy scratches. So we can really tell Lindy Ruff is just kind of getting impatient with this inconsistency with the defense. They're not falling back. But again, with the consistency and the players, I mean, we've already talked about Dylan Cousins. He had quite the streak where he just could not get a shot off, but now he got his first goal in the Islanders game, so he's 2 on the season. Another player that I really am a little bit surprised by is, what's his name? Jason Zucker. So this was a guy that we picked up in the offseason. We signed him to a 1-year contract. He played for the Arizona Coyotes, RIP, last year,
former,
as well as the Predators. And honestly, he's been doing good. I believe he has like 10 points on the season, 3 goals, 7 assists. So it's just, I mean, that was a player I wouldn't expect to see. I'd expect to see the stars like Tage Thompson, as we always say, like Alex Tuck. Not that they're not doing anything, but it's just good to see the rest of the team kind of rally together.
Yeah, that's the ongoing story. Kind of some of the moves Kevin Adams made in the offseason have really panned out for Buffalo. You talked about Jason Zucker, Ryan McLeod. These are players that Lindy Ruff really, they fit well within his system. And the hope for Buffalo is that they can get some sort of a jump from Lindy, I guess a first-year coach. You see that sometimes, though. Teams will hire new coaches, and they'll be on a roll. Not even necessarily in hockey. We've seen it in baseball before. I remember back in 2018, the Boston Red Sox with Alex Cora as their manager. The Red Sox were able to go on and win 108 games and win the World Series. It's the hope. I'm not saying the Sabres are going to be the best team in hockey this year. Believe me, they're not. But the hope is that you can kind of get this jolt from Lindy Ruff. And for some of the players, Jenna, I think we've seen that this year between Zucker, McLeod, some of the players on their fourth line, like Beck Malenstein and Sam Lafferty, who has a goal tonight, Nick Aube-Kubel, even though he's been hurt. Some of these players really kind of gel with what Lindy Ruff wants them to do.
Going back to Sam Lafferty and that goal tonight, we just started the third period. It is about 3 minutes in or something. We started on a power play, which was a cross-checking against Sam Lafferty. But yeah, I mean, just looking at this game, Rasmus Dahlin, who, when I got the ESPN notification, it came up as a tip-in from Jordan Greenway.
I did too.
But yeah, he's not even listed on the assists. It's Byram and McLeod, but Rasmus Dahlin scored like 26 seconds into the first period and then kind of quiet from there. And Sam Lafferty, Jordan Greenway, Tage Thompson, and Dylan Cousins all scored in the second. So just to put that out there.
Yeah, and this is what you need to see from the Sabres. The fact that they put on a very good showing against Ottawa on Tuesday. They are flat out dominating a very good Rangers team on the road. this is a team that maybe, you don't want to get too ahead of yourself, but maybe is starting to put things together, and they're going home for a homestand after this too. Their next 3 games are all at home. They're home Saturday afternoon at 1 p.m. against the Flames at a game I will be at. They also have a home game on Monday on Veterans Day, an afternoon game against the Montreal Canadiens, and they're home against the St. Louis Blues next week. So there's the opportunity for Buffalo to string something together. And I'm not saying that the Sabres need to win 3 in a row at home. That would be marvelous. But if you can go in, win 2 out of 3, maybe get a point in all 3, you can really put your season on a path going in the right direction and maybe get yourself closer to a playoff spot, Jenna.
I agree. I will say, though, I think you may have just jinxed them.
I hope not, but I have to have some sort of hope. I mentioned earlier when we were on our break that my fear is that the Sabres are going to get all their goal scoring out tonight, and then they're going to forget what a hockey puck looks like when I go to the game on Saturday. So fingers crossed. It'll be the first game I've been to this year. So hopefully. And it's a 1 p.m. game, too, so I won't have to drive in the dark, which is kind of nice.
Fantastic.
Which is fantastic, but I don't know. Yeah.
I think consistency is really kind of the antithesis of the season this year so far. I mean, a month in, we got 82 games to play. It's about 14 or 15, depending on which team you look at, games that have been played. But just early off the bat, I mean, there's some top contenders for like some really good, maybe even a Stanley Cup shot, especially want to go to the Winnipeg Jets. They are 12-1-0 on the season, which makes them only the 6th team in NHL history to start their first 13 games with a streak like that. This can definitely be explained by their consistency. I mean, they're kind of like, it's kind of like they go into like the Avatar state or something. They have they have such a reliable defense and a solid offense. And we're also really seeing this in the Capitals, the Capitals are the 2nd within the Metropolitan Division behind the Carolina Hurricanes. However, the Hurricanes have played 1 more game. So, I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter in my opinion. They are 9-3-0. But again, you got this solid offense, this reliable defense. I mean, this is kind of what these fans want to see. I mean,
yeah, absolutely, and it's something that Buffalo kind of needs to see is their defense has been sort of up and down. They've had some players that have played really well. You know, Connor Clifton has honestly had a very good season so far.
I think so.
A few of their players have been kind of up and down, and there's on Sabres social media, there's always the players that sort of get maligned more than others, guys like Henry Jokiharju, who sort of makes a lot of Sabres fans sour, like they just ate entire lemons. It's understandable that they would feel that way, though, after missing the playoffs for 14 straight years. But I think that it's early in the season, so the fact that Buffalo, even though the record might not be what you want it to be exactly, the fact that they're putting together wins like Tuesday night and dominating like they are tonight. I will say the Rangers did just score a minute ago, so it's now 5-1. But still, Sabres are dominating tonight. So fingers crossed, maybe the Sabres can put something together, Jenna.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think these kind of games that we win, they don't have to be exact blowout games, but they can't be these close games that we are just, like, getting by very, like, it could have gone any way. That's not how we are going to progress in the season. This is definitely not the coaching strategy that Lindy Ruff has decided for us. But, I mean, not really much else that can be hoped for from the Sabres, especially considering their playoff losing streak. I believe the only major sports team is the Jets that has a worse streak than us.
The Jets is longer by a couple of months.
And that's
it.
Pretty much it.
When you compare yourself to the New York Jets, usually that doesn't mean very good.
It doesn't go well for you.
Not at all. At least the Sabres don't have to worry about somebody like Aaron Rodgers, though. That's a positive sign. But I think that for the Sabres, there's the optimism from the fans, but it's very cautious optimism.
I think you even have that pessimism with the fans too, but we're still showing up. These I mean, especially on like weeknight games, you're not really seeing that much of a crowd, but like our opening night was still sold out. We still love the Sabres. We're still going to show up for them.
Exactly right. Well, that'll do it for tonight's episode of Sports Hour. I want to thank Jenna for joining me to talk some hockey, especially on a night where the Sabres are winning big. I also want to thank Brock Papke and Jack Hoadley, as well as everybody else behind the scenes. This has been Sports Hour. I'm Matt Volz. Good night.